Dr. Kemi for Kemi Talks Media. It's Friday, the 4th of July, 2025. It's Independence Day in America today, and it's a public holiday. I want to wish everybody a happy Independence Day, or as we say it, happy 4th of July. Now, let's talk about Kemi Talks Trump, your favorite Trump administration blog for Africa. Now, many of you have heard that some African leaders are going to have a summit with President Trump next week in the White House, and that Nigerian President Tinubu is not on the list. It's been causing a little bit of problems here because, people feel that the leaders that weren't invited are basically non-performers. They have issues in their countries and all that, But at the end of the day, yes, we do have issues in our country. There's a lot of genocide going on in Nigeria. There's a lot of issues that are not being attended to. And there are a lot of countries who are looking at a travel ban down the line because that second list has come out. And we may be one of them. I hope not, because the last time we were on that travel ban list as a Muslim country. Now, let's talk about this trip, okay? On July 9th, U.S. President Trump is going to host leaders from 5 African nations in Washington, and that's next week. They're going to be discussing commercial opportunities, all right? Now, I've been, blogging on X for 5 months now on this new blog that I'm doing. It's a Trump administration blog. And I've been encouraging a lot of journalists in Africa to follow those handles that they need to know what's going on, For example, Bureau of African Affairs. Every journalist should be following that. Even though I'm retired, that's where I work out of. I work out of, information on that handle. The State Department is another one. And then U.S. Africa Media Hub, which is like the PR section for the State Department on African Affairs. And of course, Ambassador Troy Fitrell's handle, which is that Bureau of African Affairs, and also Senior Advisor Masad Bulo's handle, okay, because he's at that same Bureau of African Affairs. You need to know what's going on, before you make any conclusions or anything. If you've been following those handles, you know that Ambassador Fitrell has been talking about a lot of good stuff about how we're going to have, good relations with Africa in commerce and, opportunities, instead of Africa being portrayed as some poor nation that always needs help, always needs aid. So President Trump pretty much chose the first 5 countries in what I would say countries that can fend for themselves and have commercial opportunities, Can we fend for ourselves in Nigeria with no electricity 24 hours? There's a lot of issues here. Even Ghana is not on this first list. Now, as you know what we say in Nigeria and Africa at large, batch A, batch B, maybe he's seeing countries one at a time. I don't know. But for now, it's 5. Someone is saying to me off the record that there might be other countries in September. So on July 9th to possibly the 16th, different African leaders are going to come to the White House. President Trump is going to host them. So I'm going to cover all that. I'm going to cover it on my X, and you're going to see everything. So the countries are Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania, and Senegal. And they're going to have a discussion and lunch at the White House on July 9th, all the leaders. And then they're going to talk about different things, as the days go by. Trump is going to probably meet with them one-on-one later on, but it's like a whole week thing. President Trump believes that African countries offer incredible commercial opportunities, which benefits both American people and African partners. Look at how many Africans are in America, in the medical field, pharmacy, different areas. So this is time to do this. No other president has really done this, just Mr. Trump. And Mr. Trump's first administration in the 45 one, you remember when he came in and said, there were some shithole countries around the world, and we were part of them. But have we improved? Some countries have improved. He doesn't view Africa as that again. You know what I mean? So some of the African publications reported earlier that, he'll be holding this summit for 2 days, like the 9th to 11th. I saw 16th somewhere, but it looks like it's 2 days, 9th to 11th. And the administration is going to be talking about issues with foreign aid for Africa. They want to curb that, okay? They don't want to do any wasteful spending anymore. You saw what happened to U.S. aid. So they're still going to align with that America First policy, okay? But what they want to do is really focus on trade and investment. And then they drive what they call mutual prosperity. I make money, you make money. You see what I mean? Now, there's a saying called bigger doesn't mean better. Okay, Nigeria is big and we are the biggest, and it doesn't mean we're the better one. Okay, Nigeria is very poor in many things right now. So he didn't pick the bigger ones first. He picked the ones that can be independent, self sufficient, and you know what I mean? Now, Secretary Rubio, Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State, wants to abandon this charity based African foreign aid model. Okay? And he says he'll favor those countries that can demonstrate that they have the ability and willingness to, help themselves, not always looking for aids and, stuff like that. And you saw what I told you about Ambassador Troy Fitzgerald, what he said last month. Was it last month, May? Sometimes in May, he said he wants a new strategy for support on the continent. So we have to be ready for that. Okay, so it's no need trolling any leaders that weren't called. Many of us have issues in Africa. Nigeria has a big one. Okay, there's a lot of genocide going on. There's a lot of people who are delayed from getting their green cards from the last administration and the one before that Mr. Trump was in. There's just been a whole big mess in that whole, Biden cluster there. So we need to change everything. All right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with U.S. aid, as in America is aiding everybody, but people are suffering in America, so they have to look at their own country first. So they want us to be self-sufficient. I mean, how else can I say this? I think I'm saying the same thing over and over and over and over again. If you're a journalist in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, in Senegal, anywhere, and I'm sure there's, Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Senegal, Mauritania, and who else is on that list? Liberia. All those journalists are going to have accompany their presidents to the White House. I will be following up with everything. I'll be giving you, bit by bit information on what's going on in Washington and whether it can serve as a model for other countries who haven't come yet to the White House. I'm hoping this story about September is true, where they might have another summit with some more African leaders. There are issues, some of our African countries are dictatorships, or as they call it, military governments. And some of our African countries have issues with, genocides and all that. He did have a bilateral meeting with Cyril Ramaphosa earlier this year. We all saw the South African president when he came to the White House, and all that stuff going on with the people that fled for refugee and everything. So at the end of the day, we've seen what's going on over there, so we have to see what's going on in the other places. I thank you for listening. Don't forget, I'm on Dr. K. Olunloyo on X. Dr. K. Olunloyo on X. Now, if you're not on X, you can follow me on Instagram, because everything I do on X goes to the Instagram. Dr. Kemi over there, Olunloyo. That's my Trump administration blog. Thanks for listening.